Hi, Gilda's Club. I know that things are not ideal right now, but I'm so glad that we're going to have this opportunity to have class like we somewhat normally would until we can be together again. This is how it's going to be, and I'm going to try and make it as fun as possible. So today we're going to see what we can do in the fiber arts at home. I know a lot of you probably don't have a huge supply of things available to you, and that's why I decided that now would be a very good time to do a little bit of mending and maintenance on your wardrobe. You never have time for this. Things sit around missing buttons or with little holes that would be easy to fix, but you don't usually have time during your busy life. So that's why we're going to be focusing on this now, when everyone has just a little more time than they were expecting to have. Now, supplies. You might not have a whole lot of sewing gear in your homes, and that's fine, because we only are going to need probably today a needle, scissors, and thread of some kind. It doesn't even have to match the project you're working with, because we're going to try and make our stitches as invisible as possible. So look around your house. I wouldn't be surprised if you had something like this, one of these mini sewing kits. Usually there's like a little bit of thread in there, a little bit of yarn, or not yarn, sorry, a couple of buttons, a few needles, and that's going to be more than enough to get the job done. You also might have one of these tucked somewhere, one of these little household needle books. Any of these little things are fine. You don't need special tools for this part. Alright, so we're going to start with putting a button on a shirt. Now, it's an easy process if you've never done it before. It might seem like a tough thing to do, but it's really not. And it's a really important skill because sometimes you have a blowout. Sometimes a button just flies off. So first thing you do, let's try and find a button to match your shirt. Now, this is a bit of a family heirloom. This is one of my grandfather's shirts, so it's always very special to me, and I try to keep it as safe as possible. You can see it's coming apart. It's old. But I want to protect and preserve this. So first thing I'm going to do, a lot of shirts will have extra buttons tucked away somewhere, like maybe in the front or even at the back. Look all over at the hem. None on the inside. I do notice, however, that I've got extra buttons here. I usually do it to the tighter one, so I can even steal that if I want to. Or call Grandma, time to check the button box. Might even be something that you can use in your little mini kit. Next, gotta figure out where exactly to sew the button. I have had situations before where I got all done, finished my button, and realized that I had spaced it wrongly. A good way of keeping that from happening is to go ahead and button up your shirt all the way. Maybe you're missing one up here and there's a gap. I'm missing the bottom two here, so I'm going to lay that nice and flat. I'm going to lay it as it should be, evenly spaced. And since I've got this dark color here, I've got a piece of chalk. If you have a light colored shirt, you can even use like a ballpoint pen or a washable marker. It's not going to show, you're going to sew over it. Pull open that button spot there and just make yourself a real good little mark so that you don't get it wrong. Got two buttons that need replacing here, so I'm going to do it twice. This step might seem silly, but it will save you heartache in the long run. Look at that. Nice little markings. See, there's my little mark. I did that by going right through the buttonhole and making my mark inside the buttonhole, like that. Ta-da! Handy. So now I'm going to carefully steal that button. It helps if you bend it back and you can actually see the threads in there. It's very easy to catch the shirt. So I'm just going to really make sure that I've got this pulled out a ways and gently trim that. There we go. Button completely stolen. Now I'm going to go ahead and get my needle all threaded up. Now I would suggest you pick a needle that you can actually see. There might be some teeny tiny ones in there, but you don't need a really specialized needle for buttoning. You just need something sharp and something that will go through your fabric. So I've got this nice big needle here. Some people have trouble threading a needle. If you go through your kit, you may find something like this. If you've ever wondered what this little guy is for, it's actually for threading your needle. You can go ahead and stick that right into the eye of your needle, like that. And now you see you've got this much bigger hole that you can go ahead and put your thread in. So I'll do that now. Select a thread that is as close as possible to the one that your shirt is already sewn with. If you don't have one that's super close, just go with something plain like white or something that'll blend in with the shirt itself. It's better to have a button on than it is to just not be able to use a shirt because you don't have the right thing. Just pick something inoffensive. You won't need a lot of thread for this. I usually like to do it done double, so that's why I've gone ahead and made this pretty long little tail here, so that I'm going to match those up so that my ends are about the same length. Now, some people like to knot at this step. Something that my home ec teacher taught me in high school is to wrap the thread around your finger a couple of times and then roll it off the tip. See how I've got that loop now? And then just pull it like that. You've got this humongo knot that is not going anywhere. Once again, let me trim that off so you can see it one more time. So matched up my ends, rolled it around my finger, then roll it off the tip of my finger there. So I've got that nice big knot because you don't want your buttons flying off. So now I'm going to go ahead and get into my fabric. This is where I marked. I want to be approximately in the center of that so that my button lines up nicely. And I'm just going to go ahead and go through the surface of that, my big knot here. Leave that there. Go through at about the same place again. Catch that loop here. Alright. Now go ahead. If there's a tail on your knot, you can go ahead and trim that now. Don't want to be messy. Then we can go ahead and pop our button on the end of the needle. Make sure that the right side of the button is up. Woohoo! Okay. So, got my little button on here. Some people go crisscross. Some people go up and down. I would say just go with whatever the rest of your shirt is doing. You can see that these ones are just up and down like that. So I'll go ahead and do that too. Hold that in place as good as possible. Through the bottom hole here. I hope you can see this. It's so hard to show you these little details. There's one. And then I think my next course of action, I'm going to go up the other side. Might be hard initially to find the route to the other side, or find your way through the buttonhole from the back. That's fine. Once you get through the first time, it should be a little easier. And remember, when you're doing little fixes like this, there are really no rules. So do it as neat as you can, but in the end, it's still always better to have a button on. I hate beautiful things not getting used because there's one little problem with them. So I just went through those twice. It's not looking quite as thick as the thread on my other button, so I'm going to go through them one more time. Whoop. This side. Whoop. Oh, I caught in the thread somewhere, but that's okay, because like I said, this doesn't have to be perfect. One. And two. Okay, so that button looks pretty similar to the others. I'm now going to come back out, but not go through any of the holes. Come up, I don't know if you can see, behind the button, So you're now on the surface. I'm going to go ahead 1, 2, 3 wraps. And then I like to go back onto the other side so that I can see what I'm doing when it comes to the knot. 3 wraps down through the fabric again on the back. Okay, now the way to knot off, go through the back here, pick up a loop, go through the back here, see that loop I've made? Go through that. This is how you tie off a knot. And now I'm always super worried that I'm going to not have it anchored well enough, so if you're as worried as I am, go through it again. Perfect. Then I like to go inside of the fabric and come out like that. Then pull it tight, trim it, and there you go. Your little button's on. So, for our next thing, we're going to fix a popped seam. It's a simple fix once again, but it's a reason that clothes sometimes lie around not being used because it just seems to be like such an effort to grab out the needle and thread, but you have time right now, so that's why we're going to do this. So, I don't think any of you have met my husband, but he has a bit of a reputation for being a little too bootylicious for his own good. This must be the third pair of pants that he's just had a full-on blowout. Look at that. Now we're lucky none of the fabric itself got ripped, but can you believe this, kid? The whole thing just completely torn open. But that's okay. We're going to fix it, and we're going to put a little bit of reinforcement in there so that it doesn't happen again. No guarantees, because this kid has a reputation, but we're going to do what we can. So let's do a little diagnosis, figure out exactly what we've got to do to get these pants in working order again. Alright, so looks like my tear goes all the way around to about the crotch of the pants. My, this kid should not be allowed to sit down. Anyway, you may have pins at home, you may not, I don't know. Since you might not, I'm not going to use pins. It's not going to be super tough without them. You know, they're a convenience, but as long as you are very careful about matching up the curves of the fabric, by keeping everything flat so that it doesn't get uneven on one side, then you're going to be fine. I'm going to start by removing any little debris. You probably have trouble seeing this, but there's little threads from where the blowout happened. I've got this here. I'm going to trim that off. Basically, you're getting rid of anything that would be in your way, because this whole lesson is about maintenance of your wardrobe. You don't need extra threads and things. Keep it tidy. Okay. I'm going to use this contrasting thread here so that you guys can see what I'm doing. I would match the thread if I were you, as close as you possibly could, but this shows up better on camera, so do as I say, not as I do. Gonna thread our needle again here. Using our handy little threader. Comes in any standard little kit. And I feel like it's an underutilized tool because I know so many people are uncomfortable threading needles. They didn't know, but they've got this great little tool here. Pick an appropriate length of thread for your project that you're trying to, or the hole that you're trying to close up. I wouldn't pick anything longer than your arm because you'll just get tangled. Gonna put the knot in it like we've been doing. Roll that off our finger, pull that knot. Nice little knot. Okay. Well, I think maybe the easiest place for me to start will be up here at the top near the waistband. Let's see. I'm going to turn it this way, because I tend to sew in this direction. I'm not sure how you like to sew, but since I'm right-handed, I find this easiest. So my blowout started here. I'm going to go back a little ways just to lock those stitches in. I don't know if you can see the black there, but I'm going to go back where I still have healthy, strong stitches. I'm going to go ahead, holding those two pieces of fabric together that I'm trying to put together. Go in there with my little knot, then go ahead, make another knot, catching that loop. Because I like knots, and I also know that this is a very vulnerable spot on my husband's clothing, so anything I can do to reinforce it, I'm going to do. So I'm going to keep holding these two pieces of fabric together as flat as possible. Then I'm going to do a super simple stitch into my fabric, both layers. Now I'm on the back side. Into my fabric, whoops, dropped my needle. Into my fabric, back side to the front side. An eighth of an inch or so. Really, it depends on your fabric. It depends on how delicate of an area the sewing is going on. For this, I want it to be really well closed since it is on my husband's hiney. Whoops, sorry, that's probably getting a little confusing looking. Into the back, out of the front. Now what we're doing is we're closing a seam here. This wasn't a rip in the fabric, it's just a seam that came undone. Not patching a hole, just re-sewing something that came unsewed. And I could keep doing that if I want, but I'm going to speed up. So what I'm going to do, enter my fabric from the front to the back. Whoops, that's my iron going off. Then I'm going, whoops, go back in. Then I'm going to come back in before I've done my stitch. Then go back out to the back. You can see I've gone through the fabric twice here. There we go, out. Out. Got all those stitches, just sticking my needle in once. 1, 2, 3. It's almost like you're gathering the fabric, then you're going to pull it straight. You don't want it tight, you want it sitting flat. And you can just keep going all the way across your seam. Kind of a relaxing activity, and it really helps you to train yourself to be accurate. Because the more similar your stitches are, the nice and straighter your seam will be. In fact, since this is a place that's a problem place for my husband, I think what I'm going to do here is actually just go ahead and put a little knot in. Even though I'm not done, I'm going to try and reinforce this section for him, since it's a bit of a trouble area. I'm just knotting like I did at the beginning, making myself a little loop. Then I keep going. Someone else is in the office here. If the camera's picking up voices, it's not a ghost. You can see how fast this is going. Clothes don't need to linger around your house with little seams popped anymore. You can just fix them, easy peasy like this. Laundry day can become mending day. I actually really enjoy maintaining my closet. I hate getting rid of things that are perfectly usable, except for a little flaw. Ow! That happens sometimes. Ooh, really poked myself. Except for a little flaw or a little tear that I could easily fix. Let me see. Ugh. Almost to the end here. Sorry if I'm getting a little erratic with my sewing. It's hard to make sure it stays right in front of the camera. You can use this stitch for all sorts of sewing, hand sewing, if you don't have a machine at home. It's quick, it's tidy, and it's easy to get good at. Okay, getting into the tough part here. This is where it's curving into the crotch. Let me see. I want to make sure that it's all lined up nicely. Stretch that every time you do that kind of gathering stitch because you do not want bunching. I'm going to go just a little further so that I can get into the good stitches like I did at the beginning, really locking in those stitches. Then I'm going to knot it. You want to be careful not to go through to the other side, like through this side of the fabric so that it shows on the outside. If you're worried about that, go up here in the seam allowance, because that's always going to be inside. It's never going to show. Oops. I've caught something. Come on. This is cheap thread is the problem, so it wants to tangle. Oh, well, here's a little lesson on the fly. See how I've accidentally got this loop out here like that? I'm just going to tie that in a nice little square knot. That should be really secure. Okay, now the scissors here, trim that off. Let's see how we did. There we go. Brand new bottom. Much more respectable young man, my husband, with this sewn up. I'm sure I'll have to do it again next month, but that's okay. The last thing that we're going to do today is put a hem on a pair of jeans. Now, everybody has in their wardrobe that pair of jeans that they might love the fit of, but they just drag right on the ground. You can see I'm very guilty of letting that happen for far too long. So today we're going to fix that problem once and for all and make those hems perfect for our height. Easy process, fun process, and makes your pants just so much more useful. So you don't have to remove this. This is my hem that came from the factory like that, but I'm actually going to do it to reduce the bulk. Instead of folding this in like it is right now, I'm going to go ahead and take that out. So let's see. I'm going to carefully go ahead and take that off here. So I've removed that edge, I've tried on my pants, and I know now that I need to take it in, let's say about 1.5 inches. So what I'm going to do actually right now is go ahead and turn these inside out. So now I've got my iron all ready to go, heated up. Got steam going if I need it, because this step is really helpful if you can iron. If you can't, oh well, but it will be more tidy if you do get some ironing done. So I said I need to take these pants up 1.5 inches. So my first fold is going to be a 1/2 inch, because that's how we're going to get the raw edge inside. So it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. No one's going to come and check your pant legs. If they do, call the police. But it should be just about at the 1/2 inch mark. I'm going to go ahead, give that some nice iron. Now that I've got that nice and neatly ironed, I'm going to go ahead and turn it a whole inch, because I needed 1.5 inches, right? This way, I've got that full length. Let's see if I got that. Ooh, I need to take that down a little bit. What does 1 inch look like? Smaller still. Okay, there we go. We're getting there. Get it just about even all the way around. Accuracy does make things look nicer, and if you know how long your hem is on one side, it makes it so much easier to match. So accuracy is not the be-all end-all, but it does make for easier, cleaner results. Yeah, so this just needs to come down a little. It might feel kind of hard to turn on the seam here. It's okay. It's going to be fine when we sew it. I've gotten this pressed now, so I've got my full 1.5 inches all folded into this new seam here, or hem here. Now, if you've pressed it, you might not need pins. Because I have pins, I'm going to use a couple. If you don't have pins, just try really hard to keep things even. Don't go further on this fabric than you go on this fabric and get it all mangled up. Now just try and keep things flat and even as possible. You can even do this sitting down at a table. I'm just going to slip a couple pins in. Keep it even. Pin however you feel comfortable pinning. There's no rules. Got everything all ready to go with my pants now. Everything in place. I've decided to use a contrasting thread so that you can see really well what I'm doing. And for the final time, we're going to load up our needle just like we've been doing. If you have it, use your little threader here. Easy peasy. You may need to get more thread. That's fine, but I wouldn't work with anything longer than the length of your arm. Don't get a whole bunch of thread out for a long seam, even though it might seem more convenient at the time. It's just not going to if you keep tangling yourself up. I'm going to put a little knot in it like I've been doing. Roll it up, pull it off. Then I'm going to come inside this place that I folded over. Hide that little knot in what is going to be inside of the seam. I'm going to give myself another little knot here because I love knots. They make me feel so much safer about what I'm doing, and I hate wasting work if something comes unraveled. So when we are sewing an invisible hem like this, we're going to be as delicate as possible on this outer fabric here. We do not want to go through it if we don't want our hem to show. Now, this is much more important on dress pants and slacks and things like that, but just for the sake of this example for you, I'm going to act like these are dress pants, something that you don't want to see the thread on the other side. So I'm going to very carefully just grab a couple of threads here. Then I'm going to enter here. Give myself, you can go up to even like 1/4 inch between stitches. Well, really you can go as far as you want between stitches. Oh, the jeans are a little tough to go through. And you're traveling that way. I'll get a little closer. Get just a couple little threads on that side. Go back inside here. All of the thread traveling happens inside of this little fold here. That's how you keep it as invisible as possible. Pick up a couple more little threads right here. Hop right in here, back inside to do my traveling with the thread. Oop, that's too much. Here we go. Try not to pull this too tight, but also understand that a whole lot of sins can be fixed when you press it. Wow, look how invisible that already is. You can hardly see any pink. Move needles or pins as you go so you don't get stabified. Whoop. Don't knot up. Hey now. Pick up just a few. You notice that I'm doing this in double. You can do it with only one thread. You are also much less likely to get these tangles that I keep getting. I just love working with 2 strands of thread because I've had so many times where I've put in a bunch of work and then the thread gave way. My work was good, but my thread wasn't. So if you're using a little cheap sewing kit or something, or you don't have a lot of options as to thread, I would double it. Why waste your work and effort? And see, this is really invisible here. Come on. Oops, catching on my bracelet. It's a really nice kind of meditative thing to sew. You're doing something practical, but there's some interest in it because you're trying really hard to be as careful as you can on that outer fabric there. Then you're having fun kind of traveling through the fold. I don't know, as far as practical sewing goes, I think hemming is a really fun thing to do. Come on. If you're having trouble getting your needle through your material here, especially with the denim, it does help to use one of these guys, these little thimbles. It will save your fingers in the long run. If you're having trouble, use that to just push the needle right through. Oop. That's too much. Try again. Oops. Come on. Here, I'll show you again. Use that, push that needle right through. Alright, so I'm not going to sew the whole seam with you guys watching me. I think that would get pretty boring. But I'll show you how to tie it off. Just like when we did our button and our hem on the pants, or not the hem, the seam on the pants. Go ahead, grab your last bit of string, or grab the last couple threads from your front. Go in here on the fold. Make sure that doesn't get pulled too tight. Go ahead, go into that fold. You're not going through the front fabric. And now I've got this loop here. See my loop? You're going to go inside that. Come on. Oh, well. Go ahead and do that again. Catch that loop. There we go. Then, once you've made knots so that you feel secure, you can just take that whole thing, go inside that fold just like you've been doing, and this is called burying the thread. Take that in, trim that carefully. Let's see what we got here. Just about invisible. You can see a little peak of pink everywhere, every once in a while. But I would turn those right side out, press them, and you've got pants that don't drag on the ground. Hooray! This is like an hour-long project, but it makes something useful that had not been useful to you before. It's a great way to use this time while you are in quarantine. So, I hope you guys had fun today in my wild little studio. Sometime I'll have to show it to you, but things being as they are, it's a super giant mess. You can see just little hints of it here and there. So another time, but I hope that this tutorial has been useful for you. I hope that you can hem pants now, sew up seams that have popped, and put buttons back on things, because those are the basics of maintaining a really nice wardrobe for yourself. Never throw away something that still fits if you can fix it instead. So stay well, wash your hands, don't touch your face, and see you next week, hopefully. Bye.